So this video is going to be on getting your audio into Ableton and splicing or slicing up the various samples and putting them into a drum rack. So the first thing we need to do is just to focus on this audio channel. You'll need at least one audio and one MIDI channel. I've got this audio channel here. You need to make sure that the auto in the monitor section is on. I also need to make sure that if I go Command, comma, go to the preferences and go to audio, you need to make sure that you have audio coming in either from your computer or from the input device that you're using, say an interface. But if this will need to be on built-in microphone if you're using that. I'm using the external one. Okay, so you can see that I've got audio coming into this here. I'm now going to disable the sound of that channel, and I'm going to activate the recording input. And you can see here when it's grayed out that I actually do have audio coming in. All I'm going to do right now is make my actual sounds. So I'll just tap anywhere here, press play, and I'll make the drum sounds with my mouth. Okay, pretty painless. I'm going to deactivate that. I will just hit that again, and we'll go back to the clip and we'll just have a listen to what I've got here. It's my kick, snare, and my hi-hat. Tickety-boo. Right, now I need to separate them all. And to do this, I'm just going to drag that up a little bit there like that. I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to use the Command E key. I'm going to do the same thing here, Command E. Now I'm just going to separate this one out a little bit, and I'm also just going to zoom in a little bit more by turning this into a magnifying glass here. I'm just going to come up to the beginning of that sample. Now I'm going to right click on it or control click, and I'm going to crop the clip, make it so all that is inside that clip is that audio that I had. I don't want all the other stuff in there. I'm going to do the same for this one. I'm just going to drag the edges of the clip up to about there, and I'll just go back to here a bit, and I will right click and go crop again. And finally I'm going to do the same thing for this one here. I can adjust this once it's inside the sampler, inside the drum rack at least. So I'm going to crop the clip again. Excellent. That part of the job is done. I'm now just going to deactivate that, and I'm just going to focus here on the MIDI channel. So I select it, I'll go to the browser, and under drums here you'll see drum rack. Just grab an instance of that, throw it on that, close down the browser. I'm just going to zoom back over here. Now I know that this is the kick, this is the snare, and this is the hi-hat. I'm going to grab this sample with like that, and I'm going to drag it down onto the C pad. I'm going to do the snare, same with the snare, I'm going to put it on the D, and this corresponds with your MIDI keyboard. And I'm going to drag that hat down onto E. I'm going to make another instance of this hat, but first, before I do that, I'm going to rename these by going Command R, and I'll call it kick. And I will go into this one, and I will go Command R and call it snare. And I'll go into this one here, and I'll Command R and go hat. And I'm going to call this one hat closed. Now while that's selected, I'm going to hold down the Option key, and while that's selected, I'm going to hold down the Option key and make another instance of it. I inadvertently opened up the browser again, sorry about that. Let's get all that clear, and I will just rename this one hat open by going Command R, hat open. Good, now I've got all my samples into the drum rack. I can close this tab down a bit so I don't have to think too much about it. I'm just going to open this up. I need to activate the MIDI input, so I need to have that on, and I'm using an actual keyboard, like typing keyboard, so I need to have that on as well. Right, so as I said, these correspond to the various notes on a keyboard, and as I'm pressing a C and a D, E and an F, I'm triggering those sounds. But if I go back to the kick, you'll notice that the sample starts here, well the marker does at least, but the sample doesn't fire till this point. So I need to change this marker and bring it up to the front of the sample. But before I do that, I want to bring your attention to the 3 different modes that this sampler, or simpler as it's called by Ableton, operates. We have classic mode, one shot, and slice. And for this, we need to have everything in classic mode. So let's just go through and do that right now. I'm going to press classic. I'm going to go to snare, make it classic, hat, I'm going to make it classic, and hat again, classic. And I'm doing this because I need to use an amplitude envelope, which I'll get to in a second. Let's go back to the kick. This little window here, this little triangle, should I say, just click on that and it'll bring up the sample in a much bigger window. We can then go to where the sample starts and bring it in closer to where it actually happens. I'm just going to press C. It's good. I'm going to go with the snare and I'm going to do the same thing. I need to bring the snare to here. And now listen what happens when I bring the sample start to various other areas in the sample. Listen to what happens to the sound, and you may want to do this. You'll notice that at the beginning of this one is like a little bit of a fade in. You can hear it. So I'm going to actually bring it to this part here. So I get that attack, all right? I'm going to go to the closed hi-hat. Again, I'm going to bring this sound, wrong one, this one here. Bring the beginning of the sample, where it triggers, to the beginning. Now, I want this to be a closed hi-hat, so it needs to have more attack. Again, you can hear that fade on. It's more like an open hi-hat. So how do I make it a bit more closed? I'm going to bring this start marker till I can actually hear the front of the sample. Here it was here. There's a bit more attack, and we're going to edit this further. I'm also going to go into the open hi-hat. I'm going to do the same thing, bring the start back to, actually back to the same place, maybe just a bit before it. Good, right. Let's go back to that closed hi-hat. Here it is. Over here you should see this window here. I'm going to go amplitude and I'm going to grab this little square and I'm going to drag it down and listen to what happens to the sound. That's altering the length of the decay of the sound. So obviously when it's shorter, it's very quick, like a closed hi-hat. I'll leave it about there. I'm going to go to the open hi-hat. I'm going to do the same thing. You'll see this window here. It's on pitch at the moment. That's by default. I'm going to grab the amplitude and I'm going to bring it. So now I get this 2 sounds. Okay, let's go to the snare drum. I'm going to do the same thing. I want to grab that envelope. Just cutting off the end of it, so it's, I'm losing all that extra stuff I don't need in a snare drum. I'm also going to bring the transposition of it down. Bring the release in, that dictates how long the sample plays for after I've hit the key. I don't want it to be very long. Maybe a little bit longer. And we'll go to the kick drum. I'll do the same thing. Hit the amplitude. And I'm just going to bring it down a bit. Okay, I'm going to close that window down. And now we have our sounds inside our simpler. We've edited the lengths of them and the envelopes. And in the next video, we're going to look at some further EQing options.